The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by Parramatta Leagues Club, The Corner Post, Rubbish Removal Kings, Flash Conveyancing, and Wine Barrels Event Hire, Sydney.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
Are you looking for the best rubbish collection Sydney has to offer? Then Rubbish Removal Kings is your top choice. They specialise in household rubbish removal, office rubbish removal, and all types of waste removal or junk removal. Comprehensive services cover all areas of Greater Sydney, including Wollongong in the south, Penrith in the west, the entire Sydney metropolitan area, the CBD, North Sydney and the Northern Beaches. Choose Rubbish Removal Kings for a rubbish removal near you. Get in touch with them today on 0411 867 719 or contact them through their website www.rubbishremovalkings.com.au. Proud sponsors of the Paracave Podcast. Hi, how are ya? Well, this is a Zac Lomax podcast, and look, I've done a lot of reels about Zac Lomax over the last few weeks and the continuing saga that is happening, and I just thought I would go through a newspaper article or an online article as well, that from the Sydney Morning Herald that was out today, and it's from Adrian Prezenko. And look, I just thought, instead of doing a reel, I thought I would go through it and just give a little bit of thoughts about it as well, because look, this is now a travelling circus, I think. Look, we have had the Melbourne Storm implicated in some sort of contract signing of Zac Lomax whilst he was under contract to the Parramatta Eels. We've had the Melbourne Storm connect to, well, this will be in the article anyway, connect to the NRL asking for help to sign Zac Lomax. We've had the NRL listening to them and potentially helping the Melbourne Storm as well. So look, it is a real circus. Look, I said pretty much from day one, I said if this was to be the easiest solution to this would have been, yes, sure, Zac, you can have a release if you want to go to R360. R360 doesn't happen until 2028. Okay, no worries. I'll just go back to Parramatta. Not a problem. And I will play wing there because that is my best position. I've represented New South Wales. I've represented Australia for that position, not centre. So I will go back as a winger at Parramatta. That probably would have been the easiest solution there could have been. Whether he would have been welcomed back to Parramatta after wanting a release to play rugby, I don't know. But look, it just would have been so much easier to do this. Anyway, to do that, I should say. Anyway, let's get into the article, and as I said, I'll stop here and there, and I will talk about the article as I go. Anyway, this is from the Sydney Morning Herald, Adrian Prezenko, and it starts off: the Melbourne Storm asked the NRL to intervene and apply the blowtorch to Parramatta to release Zac Lomax to them, according to explosive court documents tendered to the Supreme Court. The legal stoush between the Eels and Lomax has taken a nasty turn, with the Storm allegedly threatening the Eels that the NRL could impose punitive steps relating to its salary cap if the Blue and Golds didn't accept their compensation offer. Now, okay, the legal stoush has taken a nasty turn. Yeah, okay. The Storm allegedly threatening the Eels? Come on. Anyway, okay, let's go down more. Parramatta commenced legal proceedings to prevent Lomax from joining the Storm, given his release from a 4-year contract was a contingent on the Eels providing written consent. The Blues winger was granted a release to join breakaway Rebel competition R360, but has been left in limbo after its inaugural season was put back to 2028. Okay, yep, we knew that. The matter has now been scheduled for a 5-day hearing from March 2. That means there'll be no outcome until after the Storm's season opener against the Eels on March 5 at Amy Park. Now, I wish I was going down to Melbourne to watch that game, but look, it's going to be probably a full house there. And look, I am dead set certain that my Eels friends, mates that go down there in the blue and gold will make plenty of noise down there against the Melbourne crowd. And look, it will be a pretty hostile crowd, I reckon. But geez, I wish I was down there. But anyway, fresh details about the backroom machinations have come to light following the release of a slew of documents. It is alleged that in a phone call between Storm chair Matt Tripp and Eels counterpart Matthew Beach on January 13, that the latter again rejected a $200,000 transfer fee. And so he should, because what is a transfer fee going to do for Parramatta? Absolutely nothing. It doesn't go into their salary cap, and it will help out the club. It could go into their pathways, but look, we've lost a quality player, an international player, a state of origin player. Not going to help us on the field. During the telephone call, Mr. Tripp referred to the possibility of punitive steps being taken by the NRL against the Parramatta Eels in relation to its salary cap if the Parramatta Eels did not agree to the proposal being put forward to the Melbourne Storm, according to a document that Eels tendered to court. So the Melbourne Storm chairman has contacted the NRL. Please help us. There will be punitive steps being taken by the NRL against the Eels for not accepting the proposal. Why should they accept it? This assertion by the Melbourne Storm was intended or had the tendency to exert pressure on the Parramatta Eels in circumstances where the NRL had never communicated such a stance to the Parramatta Eels. The Eels raised the assertion in writing on January 22 with NRL CEO Andrew Abdo, who denied the NRL had ever made such a statement to the Storm. It is also alleged Melbourne Storm CEO Justin Rodsky texted Abdo on January 21. "Hi Andrew, not getting anywhere at this point. Can you apply the blowtorch on Parramatta to get this done?" So in other words, NRL, can you please help us? We want Zac Lomax. Can you put the blowtorch on Parramatta? We want to get this done. Come on. Rodsky added, Lomax staying in the NRL is obviously a win for the game. Now, look, as much as I would hate to agree with him there, you do want to see the best players in rugby league. And Zac Lomax is a great player. As I said before, he's an Origin player. He is a Australian player. So, he is a quality player. So you want your best players in the best game, the greatest game of all. It's just the way that this is all going on about. So, according to the Eels, this message was an attempt to use the NRL to place pressure on the Parramatta Eels to resolve the matter on terms acceptable to the Melbourne Storm. So, look, don't worry about the Eels. The Melbourne Storm, they just want Zac Lomax. So, can you put pressure on them to accept our deal? Come on, pretty please, come on. So, let's just put pressure on the Parramatta Eels to sink in and just say, yep, okay, we'll take your offer, $200,000 transfer fee. Nah, that doesn't happen. During the negotiations, this communication was not disclosed by the Melbourne Storm to the Parramatta Eels. It is not known whether any other communications have occurred between the NRL and the Melbourne Storm concerning the placing of pressure or otherwise on the Parramatta Eels to accept offers made by the Melbourne Storm. So the Melbourne Storm, the documents show the Eels rejected offers of 100,000, 200,000 and 300,000 as a transfer fee. Earlier this week, in a bid to break the impasse, the Storm again offered 300,000, but this time they tried to do it a little bit differently. This time Melbourne said 211,000 was in the form of salary cap relief. Okay, so 211,000 in salary cap relief, with the remaining 89,000 as a transfer fee, presented as a best and final offer. Again, it was rejected by the Eels, and so they should. I am standing by this club, my club, and many thousands of others' club as well. And look, I can tell you now that probably majority of the NRL fan base is behind Parramatta in this one. There are some fans that are with the Melbourne Storm on this one, but 95% of fans are standing by what the Parramatta Eels are doing. And so they should, because this has never been seen before. Look, I think the one that we can think of is Gordon Tallis back in the day, but that was probably a completely different situation that had to do with Super League, I think. We had Sonny Bill Williams, who walked out on the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, but I can't remember a lot about that situation. So, the documents don't reveal how 211,000 would result in salary cap relief. So, they're saying, look, 211,000 was in the form of salary cap relief, but we can't reveal, or the documents don't reveal how it would be in salary cap relief. So we all know how the Melbourne Storm go with a salary cap. But anyway, it also emerged Lomax on this is a big one. This paragraph here. It also emerged. Lomax on Christmas Eve texted Storm stars Cameron Munster and Harry Grant about a prospective move south. Okay, let's just put this into thoughts for a second. Christmas Eve, right? Yeah, sure, you got to be looking for your future and what you're going to do post getting out a release from Parramatta. But Christmas Eve, don't you spend that with your family? And it's a family time. But as I said, sure, you got to sort out your future. But Christmas Eve, and texted Storm stars Cameron Munster and Harry Grant, 2 Queenslanders. Oh, must be mates with them, or wanted to be mates with them, I guess. Well, maybe from the Australian side, I guess. I was probably asking, hey, hang on, what's it like down in Melbourne? Do you think they would want me down there? Can I move down there? Do you guys want me down there? Who knows what was said in that text message or text messages, but I'm sure they will all come out in court. Lomax was 1 season into a 4-year Parramatta deal that had the base value of $700,000, supplemented by a $25,000 bonus for appearing in 2 State of Origin games, a private health insurance allowance of $5,000 and relocation expenses of $10,000. The New South Wales winger had received offers to play rugby in France, Japan and Australia, but Storm lawyers claim a revised offer from Rugby Australia to play Super Rugby locally was less than half what he was earning as a professional rugby league player and less than what he is capable of earning if he continues to play in the NRL. Now that is fair enough, okay, because he is a rugby league player. I don't know what he is like at rugby union, but why would you want to pay a player top dollar, the same amount of money that he is earning in rugby league, if he hasn't played rugby, or he might have played it as a kid or whatever? But Yeah, I agree with Rugby Australia there. He's not going to earn as much as what he is in the NRL. And look, play offers in France, Japan, and Australia. Well, look, I don't know. I don't know what I would do in this situation. Well, I don't know what I would do in this situation. I don't know because I'm not a first grade rugby league player, and I obviously cannot speak for Zac Lomax, but I would probably, if it was me, and look, again, I'm not in the situation, so I don't know. I'm just throwing out what ifs there. I would have, if he wanted to go to R360, which is a rugby union competition, probably not starting till 2028. Now, surely he would have got a good offer to go there anyway, because that's how they would have tried to get their players. But why wouldn't you play rugby in Australia next season, or even, this season, 2026 and 2027, and just show how good you could be? Because you never know. There is a Rugby Union World Cup in Australia next season in 2027. He had the potential to potentially become a dual international if he is that good at rugby union. So why not play Super Rugby? Anyway, that was just my thought. Why didn't he do that? The Sydney Morning Herald, this masthead, broke news last week that Lomax was prepared to return to Parramatta with court documents confirming he was prepared to do so during a transition period before R360 actually commenced. Rather than pursue the alternate rugby union offers, Mr. Lomax had pursued employment with the Melbourne Storm, a direct competitor and a rival. I'm not going to call them fierce. A rival of the Parramatta Eels in the NRL competition, the Eels stated. So how can he do that when the conditions of the release from Parramatta were that you cannot play for another NRL club until your current contract runs out with the Eels? Yes, we'll grant you that release, but you cannot do that. So he pursued employment with the Melbourne Storm because he obviously wanted to play rugby league again. It's alleged Lomax entered into an in-principle Melbourne agreement on Christmas Eve, 5 days before the Storm contacted the Eels to inform them of the potential transfer. So they contact their agreement on Christmas Eve, 5 days before the Storm contacted the Eels. So the Storm looked after themselves first, hopefully in the way of getting Zac Lomax, and then they contacted the Eels. The Eels alleged that Lomax was granted a release on the basis of his representations that he did not intend to play in the NRL competition. While Parramatta acknowledges Lomax's release freed up salary cap space, the move impacted its football program, especially in the light of the time of year when limited players are off market and the Parramatta Eels were not in a position to recruit a player who would be able to enter into a 3-year contract with the same skill as Mr. Lomax. Very, very true. Okay. A lot of people talk about this frees up salary cap space, but look, that doesn't mean that next year or the year after other players' contracts are going to go up. So when it says freed up salary cap space, if you have Zac Lomax on, I'm not too sure what he was on, but say, for example, 700,000, and then, you don't go out and buy a player for 700,000. And at that time of year as well, there is no quality players available as the same skill as Mr. Lomax. It's alleged during a call between the club chairs on January 8 that Tripp refused to entertain player swap options proposed by the Parramatta Eels. So the Parramatta Eels, they obviously wanted a like-for-like player, so a representative player. And look, I've done reels about this before. Back a few weeks ago, there was the talk about Jack Howarth Who else was there? Will Warbrick and Xavier Coates. Now, why should they have to leave Melbourne to go to Parramatta and for Zac Lomax to go there? But as far as I'm concerned, that is right by the Parramatta Eels, and those three players mentioned could be potentially have the same skill as Zac Lomax. So, look, Parramatta put the offer to them, and Melbourne refused to entertain player swap options. Sources not authorised to speak while the matter is before the courts, which is fair enough, told the Sydney Morning Herald that out-of-favour Parramatta forward Ryan Madison was presented as a potential option. The previous day, Abdo, ARLC Chair Peter V'landys and Rugby League Players Association Clint Newton had met with the club chairs in a bid to break the stalemate, but the parties were unable to do so. That is the end of the article. Okay, now, both parties were unable to do so. Now, that is fair enough. It's going to court now. March the 2nd, probably for about a 5-day trial. So, look, my personal opinion, and I've got no legal qualifications at all. So my personal opinion is I think what will happen in the verdict of this case is that Zac Lomax will be paying Parramatta some compensation. Obviously, probably the legal fees, I guess, if Parramatta win this, which I think they will. But I also think that he will be forced to sit out the game for a year. Now, people are saying, no, he should sit out for the whole 3 years. But look, at the end of the day, he still has to earn a living. And look, that is probably a pretty, I guess, fair result. Maybe even throw in at the time of his, for the length of his Parramatta contract, which I think ran out at the end of 2028, I think. I think it was for 25, 6, 7 and 8. So the end of 2028, that even if he is playing for the Melbourne Storm, he doesn't play against Parramatta. Whether that be just normal club rounds, semi-finals, grand final. He doesn't play against Parramatta. That would be probably a fair outcome, I think, anyway, for fans, I guess. But that's my personal opinion. I can see him just getting a year out of the game and not playing against Parramatta whilst that Parramatta contract is, well, his former contract went to the end of 2028, and also a bit of compensation for Parramatta, which means legal fees and plus a little bit on top as well. I think that will be the outcome. I don't know what will happen. I am not a legal expert, so I think that's what will happen. We'll just have to wait and see. I have the Monday off, the 2nd of March. I may even go into the court and just see what's going on. So you never know. You might see me reporting live from the court. I don't know. But I'll see what happens on that day. But look, it is going to be very, very interesting as well what happens. I will bring you more and more as it comes. No doubt, and I will be doing more and more content, more and more reels. Thank goodness Zac's giving us all this content. It's something for us to do in this off-season. But look, I just think it is a massive circus. It's beyond a joke now. And the fact that the NRL are helping Melbourne, well, I just don't understand how that can happen. I understand why they're trying to do that. Because they want the best players in the game. Understandable. But you cannot help the Melbourne Storm. Why should they help the Melbourne Storm? And potentially, if they're not going to help any other club in the future. This is going to open up a can of worms if Zac Lomax does end up playing for Melbourne this season, because that would mean that any other club can go to the NRL and ask for help to get a player to their side. Because they can just say, well, you helped the Melbourne Storm, why don't you help us? Well, the NRL, mind you, Andrew Abdo and Peter V'landys weren't there at the time, didn't help Parramatta when Israel Folau wanted to sign for Parramatta for a smaller amount than what he was worth, because he loved the game of rugby league. And the NRL didn't allow it. They said, no, you're worth 10 times that amount. So if you've got 10 times the amount, you can sign him, but he's not playing for you guys for under that amount, which was a joke, because from memory, it was when he was coming back from AFL and he wanted to play rugby league again. So he had a couple of years out of the game, and Parramatta were keen to sign him at the time. And I'm pretty sure it was only for like $75,000. It was a very low amount. But the NRL said no. So they didn't help us out then. They haven't helped us out since. Why are they helping out the Melbourne Storm? I don't know. But look, this is, as I said, round one will be the most watched game round one ever. And I can tell you now, I am very confident that Parramatta will break the streak. And I wish I was going down to Melbourne. Unfortunately for Parramatta fans, the second round game is up at Magic Round. It would have been so good to be at CommBank Stadium. Their dead set would have been 30,000 fans there, and it would have been a sellout. And the noise that the Parramatta fans will make, it would have been deafening. If that game, the return bout, was at in CommBank Stadium. It is unfortunately up at Magic Round, but in saying that, I dare say there is a lot of Parramatta fans going up to Magic Round, and they will make just as much noise up there as if they were at CommBank Stadium. I can guarantee that. The noise of that crowd will be massive, so that will again be another big game to watch as well. So anyway, I just thought I'd go through that article, do a podcast on it. I hope you enjoyed that one. And look, there'll be plenty more information coming out as well. For now, the court case has been deferred to the 2nd of March, a day after the Las Vegas Round Zero, so they call it. So footy is almost here. I think at the time of this recording, I think it's about 16 days away, March 2. So, as I said, I might even be at the court case just as a casual viewer and just see what's going on. I wish I could be there for the whole 5 days. That's if it goes the 5 days, but that would be interesting. But yeah, I wish I could be there the whole 5 days. But I might see if I can get there on the Monday. I think people are free to go, so might even see you down there at the court case. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. The podcast will be coming back full time in a few weeks' time. Where we will be doing previews, reviews. I'm trying to line up some interviews as well. I've got a few in the bank already. You would have seen my posts. I have Kerrod Walters and Benny Elias ready to go. So I've got those two ready to go. And I will reveal here now. So if you're listening to this podcast, I will reveal that I do have David Wesley as well recorded in the bank, ready to go as well. So three weeks of interviews there. I am trying to get some more interviews as well. Please let me know who you would like to hear on the podcast from an interview point of view, but looking to do some reviews of games, previews of games, looking to do an NRL review podcast, and also maybe a preview podcast, and also looking to have the rugby league coach on there. giving us a coach's point of view game review. So looking forward to that. I hope he knows about that. We have talked about it, so he'll be cool with that, I'm pretty sure. But all will be announced very, very soon, and the podcast will be back full time very, very soon. So thank you very much for listening to this one. And look, this will be out on the weekend when it originally comes out. And if you listen to it on the weekend, have a great weekend. Enjoy your rugby league. And look, the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. See you next time.